Welcome, my name is Christopher Peter. The hardest part in life is accepting the truth when you do not like it, may not agree with it, or it creates an emotional response, but we must weigh the impact of facts, evidence, and data when we reach a judgment on issues and events. That is what I'm going to do in addressing the wildcard round that did not go the way I thought it would for my teams. I am going to discuss all the games that took place in the opening round of the playoffs of the greatest league in the world, and I will speak about the college football playoffs as well. In this podcast episode, I'm going to discuss the great action from the NFL wildcard weekend. Also, I'm going to discuss the weekend of college football as well, which will have its championship game on January 19. Also, I am going to discuss the importance of accepting reality even when emotions may run high and the facts, evidence, and data paint a picture that we may find it hard to understand at the moment. Acting rationally and within reason is important and can be life-saving. I will join Jennifer to discuss some of the pressing current events and issues in our political space. We will look to provide an economic perspective that will set aside ideological biases and offer rational takes on critical issues. Like many of my fellow Eagles fans, I'm still finding it hard to accept that my Philadelphia Eagles are no longer in the playoffs, but I have to accept the reality that the game was played and we lost. While it is extremely difficult to win back-to-back in any sport, especially football, it becomes impossible when you fail to address issues plaguing the team all season long. I do not feel that the better team won this game. My Philadelphia Eagles were the more talented roster and experienced, winning at a higher level than this version of the 49ers team. The 49ers were a depleted team but played their hearts out. The more focused, prepared, and coached team did, unfortunately. The 49ers are resilient, coached with innovation, and have shown time and time again under Kyle Shanahan that they can win regardless of situation. Their team did not play consistently well, but they innovated when it mattered most. Congratulations to the 49ers. The better prepared team won. In sports and life, it always seems to be a consistent phenomenon that the issues we ignore are the ones that come back to impact us. They return to bite us in the behind. For most of the season, we knew that our opponents knew what offensive play was coming and that our plays were not dynamic enough. So on the biggest play of the game, we ran every potential receiver into coverage and threw to the triple covered option. I am far from an expert, but there were many moments in the game where it was pretty clear that they were simply rerunning plays without any changes. I could tell the formations were just flipped, as some pundits pointed. Like the play where Barkley had a good run early, but it was rerun many other times to no avail. No alterations or ability to throw in run formations or run and pass formations. I understand that there are limitations on how much you can change a scheme during the season, but it feels like our approach was simply our best against your best without really amplifying their skills and traits that makes our roster special. Kyle did that to help his depleted team play up to par. We just did the same thing and expected a different result. On the flip side, our defense played well overall, but missed some plays like those crossers that the Niners ran. If you recall, a couple weeks ago, they used those plays to defeat the Bears. I felt we should have been a little better prepared to at least stop a couple of them, but the defense was all right and many made up for mistakes. I think we have a special teams problem. If not for a missed extra point, we may have had the opportunity to kick for overtime rather than needing that touchdown. These missed kicks are happening too often lately, and many of these misses are not difficult for Jake Elliott in the recent past, especially in a season where kickers are hitting longer kicks more frequently with a change in the kicking balls. We must accept that every year is different. Players are not robots, and coaches are not plug and play. This is not the same quality of a roster as the team that had a run and won our second Super Bowl. We were not as healthy and had more holes as we needed to manage the cap by making decisions on costly veterans. There has to be change after failure to some degree, and we knew that the change would be on the offensive staff. Kevin Patullo will not be our offensive coordinator going forward. While some may celebrate the change, I think we must acknowledge that he faced a difficult challenge in learning a new position and skill set in an environment that required him to hit the ground running. In some situations, based on the experience and proven talent of a team, there is no room for anyone to learn on the job. We already experienced the same challenge with Brian Johnson, who was inconsistent during his team at the helm. It is hard to replace an offensive coordinator taking a head coaching job and bringing their top aides with them. To some degree, we need to get back to an offense that is more innovative, opportunistic, and controlling of the pace of the game. The ability to have long sustained drives that shorten the game and reduce opportunities for our opponents is important, while being explosive when we need to be. As Doug Peterson used to say, being multiple in our play design and play calling, where Jalen will have options and ability to check without the defense truly able to know whether a run or pass is coming. For our roster, I think we need to improve our pass rush, solve the second corner issue, and add some young talent to the offensive line. A big factor was the health of our offensive line. who had many key players miss games. We need to reinforce the most important aspect of our team. I know a lot of people are disappointed in A.J. Brown, but I think he is still a great talent and we need to bring him back in an offense that does allow him, Smitty, Barkley, and Goddard to thrive. Yes, I believe we need to resign Goddard. He had a great season overall for us, and we need some stability on that side of the ball. I accept that we got the results that were directly related to our performance, but I am not going to lose perspective and feel like the world is ending. I am not an expert, but the Eagles will still be a favorite for the NFC East next year. The Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders all have work to do in the offseason, but the Eagles should still have a better roster and greater experience than them. We have shown the ability to bounce back and let us prove the sports world wrong again. Many of the pundits do not like Philly and that is perfectly fine. We just need to support the comeback and make them once again have to acknowledge us when our Eagles rise again. First, let us discuss the results. Josh Allen led the Buffalo Bills in the best performance of the wildcard round to win on the road against what appears to be a team on the rise in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Allen has to put the team on his back to win this year, which is wide open for him, if his team can stay healthy enough and rise to the occasion. Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams are regarded as one of the better teams in the field, but did not play that way consistently against the lowly Carolina Panthers, who unexpectedly won their division. The Rams had the game in control until they gave the Panthers life, but were able to win on a great late play. The Chicago Bears continue to be a second-half team. They played a horrible first half at home against their longtime rival in the Green Bay Packers. The Packers simply were unstoppable in the first quarter and entered the fourth with a 15-point lead, and they proceeded to give up 25 points in the fourth quarter alone. The Packers were a preseason favorite and ended up the 7th seed. They went all in and traded for Micah Parsons, who unfortunately did not finish the season. Their offense was inconsistent in spite of the plethora of young talent. They did not live up to the hype. The Chargers and Patriots probably had the least interesting game, but the Patriots did what they were supposed to do. Drake May did not have the greatest first playoff game, but he played better as the game went on. The Chargers continue to struggle in the playoffs with Justin Herbert, especially with all those injuries. And the Steelers succumbed to the league's best defense in the Houston Texans as many expected. Both my teams lost this weekend. Not a good feeling. But the Steelers just did not match up well and unfortunately kept up their winless playoff streak, despite continuing the streak of winning seasons. Next year they will have to do it without iconic head coach Mike Tomlin, who stepped down. Now, the divisional round of the playoffs will take place. The Denver Broncos and their stout defense will host the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. The Jaguars dismantled the Broncos to end their winning streak and the Bills will probably have enough talent to do the same. I will pick the Bills in this matchup. The Patriots will take their chances with that vaunted Texans defense in Foxborough. Drake May did not shine in his playoff debut and now he has a tougher task. The Patriots will probably be able to handle the Texans offense, which is not that dynamic. I will pick the Patriots to win a close one. The 49ers will travel to Seattle to face the team that overall dominated them in Santa Clara to take the top seed in the conference. While some have doubts in Sam Darnold, the Seahawks are healthy and fierce. The Niners stop here as I believe the Seahawks will show that the final game was not a fluke. The Chicago Bears will host the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have been viewed as the best all-round team in football for some time, but have not played like it late in the season. The legend of these Bears keeps on growing with resiliency and off-the-field petulance. Will the Rams return to form or will the Bears run out of luck? We will see. I think the Rams will rise to the occasion. If we are able to look past the issues with the NIL money, the transfer portal, and the power conferences dominating the governance of the sport, we can see the great stories that will define this college football season and give hope for many programs around the nation. Indiana University is traditionally viewed as a basketball-first school. Not surprising because of the prowess of the late Bobby Knight and his great Hoosier teams. In football, they have struggled mightily for generations it appears. But not the last 2 seasons. They are in position to capture their first national championship. The obstacle in their way is the potential resurgence of what used to be a blue-chip program in the University of Miami, who have risen out of the ashes of parity to finally find its way to the national championship game. The Hurricanes eliminated the defending champions in the Ohio State Buckeyes and will now have to face the undefeated Hoosiers that have been winning games in blowout fashion. ESPN should have Ryan Day on the broadcast, as he had to face both of these teams in back-to-back games, which is something that must have been very challenging. Losing to Indiana for their first loss followed by losing to Miami for only their second loss of the season. Not a dig at Ryan Day, but he can probably speak to the intricacies of facing both programs, and he is good in the media. I am excited for January 19 as it should be an exciting game. The spread is 8.5 for Indiana, but I would not be surprised if Miami finds a way to win. For me, I am rooting for the lovable loser-turned-champion story. Indiana winning a national championship should inspire other teams to step up their programs. Despite all the angst over the transfer portal and NIL, programs can turn around long periods of losing for prosperity. I do hope that we can live in a society where people choose restraint and compassion for each other, rather than aggression, agitation, and violence. Being allowed to do something is not always the justification to actually carry out the action. We can choose judgment and deliver justice in a more compassionate manner. At the same time, there are consequences for the choices and actions that we make in life. In a society that does everything it can to separate responsibility for the actions of people, the reality is that the choices and actions we make every day either advances our interests or could push us towards harm, and reckless choices in a moment can lead to catastrophic results. When you make choices to instigate, provoke, or commit violence against another person, you may put that individual in a fight or flight situation that will lead to justifiable violence in response, especially if your action is clearly in violation of the law and their response is within reason. It may be emotional for people who support such provocative behaviors, but the reality is that you should be careful what you ask for. Those who choose violence tend to get violence.
I think the loss of life is a tragedy because there is someone who will no longer be part of their family, community, or social network. We can acknowledge that fact and wish that the event had a different outcome for certain. But we should be able to acknowledge the facts that show where the true responsibility falls. If we truly are a nation of law and order where no one is above the law, then people who act against social norms and instigate to perpetuate violence against those who protect and serve should be responsible for their actions. Too many times in our society we choose to not see things as they really are. Sometimes it is because of how we learn about issues, being shielded from the facts by news media trying to drive a narrative that is not based on reality. Sometimes we are not willing to objectively look at the events to set aside political biases. You may reside on the side of trying to defend illegal immigration, but you should be rational enough to not accept that people should commit violent acts against law enforcement.
I agree that we can be empathetic about the fact that someone lost their life because of the bad choice they made. People make mistakes and some of those mistakes come with unanticipated consequences. The loss that results from the event is still as hurtful to those close to the individual regardless of where the fault may lay. The bigger message is that we need to stop this perpetuation of social violence used to try to intimidate others, especially those who are doing the work to make our society safer and ensure the rules are equally enforced. There are people that choose social violence as the default response, which is wrong. Just because you disagree with someone's job duties or policies they are carrying out does not give you the right to harm and harass them. And when you choose to violate social norms and acceptable behaviors, you should be held accountable and you generally are not able to predetermine your consequences. There are those on the left, who will harm and harass others as a badge of the progressive status, and they view that the only acceptable response to their crimes is complete exoneration. Their flawed view of what social norms truly are is purposefully skewed to justify deviant behaviors that will cause larger, more intense conflicts.
Part of the problem with fringe groups on either side is that they are not logical in their thinking. They will do mental chess to justify behaviors that are not aligned with the mainstream norm. Unfortunately, they view those flawed frameworks as normal. Making matters worse is those people and organizations empowering the fringes rather than pushing for reason and rationality. I think we cannot ignore the media's role in inflaming these situations. Elevating statements that are just simply not true and downplaying evidence that shows a different reality than the narrative that they are trying to advance. I think it is important that the truth comes out, because we see all too often that early narratives are simply not the reality of the event. And there is a purposeful strategy to shape how people view these issues rather than providing an honest reporting when all the facts are available.
We talk a great deal about the media because our traditional view of the media does not align with what it really is. We view the media as a credible source. In reality, the media is traditionally a great deal of competing propaganda. The media is much different in the past, where opposing views have exchanges of information and allow the public to consider their arguments to determine the prevailing opinion. Now, the focus is not on logical debate, rather use of ad hominems, which is the practice of attacking the messenger rather than the message. Many people simply cannot make a logical counterargument. They just make a personal attack. How you feel about the person is not a rational argument. We accept this flawed excuse of debate because it is wrapped around entertaining banter. This is why people sometimes get their news from comedians rather than actual reporting or source data. Because the messenger is likable, then they must be telling the truth. In reality, Most celebrities are not experts outside of their field, but will do anything they are paid for. For some people, their emotional response will make them susceptible to illogical ad hominems that will cause them to defend something factually wrong. On the other hand, some may be more responsive to the hard data and facts, which may lead to them not being empathetic to real needs of people in different situations than them.
Ideally, people should be looking for facts, evidence, and available data, but also weighing a bit of how people of different viewpoints may feel about the issue. You should be able to acknowledge the truth and reality while understanding why somebody may feel a certain way. Having this credible compassion will help you become a better critical thinker and make better decisions that will lead to solutions rather than throwing fuel on already hot issues. Getting back to critical thinking as a logical exercise rather than a buzzword will go far to reduce our division. In closing, I echo the disappointment of our Philadelphia Eagles losing a very winnable game in the wildcard round. That is sports. The ultimate meritocracy. You cannot wish away your issues or flaws. You must face them and find workable solutions. Many of us went along with the notion that something magical will happen once the playoffs started. No, they were not able to turn it on. Just more of the same. I believe we need to be able to accept reality and see things how they truly are. Be critical and objective. Choosing compassion over conflict will usually lead to better outcomes. Actual compassion, not conflict being sold as compassion. We always see ourselves in the best of intentions and others as defined by their worst moments. Paraphrasing a saying from a great American leader. But it still rings true today. The reality we hopefully will accept today is that we all can be better to each other and for each other. Part of that is making sure society upholds its promises to the people. And that we all are accountable to follow our laws, social norms, and American values. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes of the Christopher Peter Review. Thank you once again. Until next time.